Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
And we have developing quarterback watch 2024 news and information to dish out to you guys here on Purple Daily. But first, a reminder to you guys. So the draft party at the Filmore on Thursday, April 25th has been sold out for a month. You guys scooped up all the tickets within 72 hours, and we appreciate you for that. We've worked with the venue, the Filmore, to try and open up just a few more tickets, a few more VIPs that are $100 per ticket. And tomorrow, Wednesday, April 3rd at 10 a.m. Central Time, we are making 10 pair of VIP tickets available at scorenorth.com/party. That's scorenorth.com/party. You get a Score North beanie, a meet and greet with the show beforehand, food and drink vouchers. You also get a Purple Daily flag you can wave with Judd Zulgad. So when we...
Yeah, in unison with me. It'll be great.
Yeah, when we hit the music, then everybody can have a flag. Presented by our friends at Popped Corn of Minnetonka. All the VIPs also get a Popped Corn sample bag as well. So just if you're looking for tickets, this is the only way. 10 a.m. Central Time tomorrow at scorenorth.com/party. So, man, we're pumped, man. 3.5 weeks away from this thing. Biggest event of the year. Vikings possibly going to pick their quarterback for the next 10+ years if all things go well, gentlemen.
This might be the most, now going into it, exciting Vikings draft since I started to follow this team. Because like when they took Moss, they were drafting like what, 22nd, 23rd, and you didn't know Moss was going to get there.
Yeah.
So it's like once it happened, it was awesome. But I think this might be the most anticipation for a draft that involves the Vikings that I can think of.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think
quarterback. Perfect storm.
They went into that 2011 one, which is the Ponder draft, and I think we were curious on who they were going to pick, but I don't remember also, and this is just the state of, media and everything else, because there was a lot of talk about like all those quarterbacks too in 2011, but currently in 2024, like just the uncertainty and then also the coverage of all these quarterbacks is nuts compared to what was going on in 2011.
Yeah, it is. It's much more of a microscope now than it was 10 or 12 years ago. For me, Twitter kind of existed, but you didn't have like YouTube and Twitter and podcasts, all just this wave of discussion and media and even just like the attention on the combine and the pro days and everything. It all feels magnified compared to 10+ years ago, which brings us to quarterback watch 2024, where we found out via Jordan Schultz here. Jordan Schultz, and he was actually on Cowherd's radio show today too. So there's a couple things. He's the Bleacher Report NFL insider. 279,000 followers on Twitter. He's a very legit NFL insider. One of the fast risers the last couple of years. And he reported yesterday, things are heating up for Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr. Sources say he had dinner with the Giants in Seattle after his pro day, followed by a private workout in Seattle with the Minnesota Vikings. Jordan Schultz adds to this report, Penix will have top 30 visits with the Broncos, Falcons. That's interesting. Raiders and Commanders, according to multiple sources. Just real quick, they're just
doing their work. They're just doing their work. That's the top. You can bring in 30 guys. You're just doing your work. Don't consider that.
Maybe they are. Maybe it's been like 2 weeks and they're already a little bit sick of Kirk.
They're going to replace Kirk at 8.
They're sick of the 9-win seasons. They're sick of the first round playoff failures.
This isn't what we thought.
But the Broncos make sense. The Raiders make sense. The Commanders, I don't know that they're taking him number 2, but if they trade back or something and they like Penix. Yep. And then Jordan Schultz went on The Herd with Colin Cowherd this morning, and he said, from what he's hearing, Michael Penix Jr.'s ability to manipulate the line of scrimmage is a key reason why his NFL draft stock has risen. But like, he hasn't played a game in 2.5 months. So it's like He hasn't like manipulated the line of scrimmage in a pro day.
So
is it his stock is back on the rise because teams are just like watching film again? Like this is where I'm confused.
Okay, so to attempt to clear up the confusion, I think this is how it goes down, okay? So there is the outside world and there's the inside world. Because you're right, like no one's played a game. And I'm sorry, but your pro day or the combine where you don't have guys rushing you does not count. I think what people learn, and this is where you also are misled, is what the league thinks. So I don't think Penix's ability to manipulate the line of scrimmage has changed one iota since his last game. And I think the league liked that, but that wasn't talked about enough. And remember, we are going off of mock drafts, right? So like it can be at a whim that Michael Penix goes up and Michael Penix goes down. Like he has a great semifinal and he goes up, and then the final's not as good and it goes way down. But the league doesn't do that. So I think what you're reading,
scouting directors, oh God.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm done. So I think what you are reading is what he is getting from intelligence that has not changed. Like I think it's like we're trying to handicap the United States' defense system, but they don't want us to know. So like we're guessing. And then we hear, well, the defense system actually is prepared for this or that, and we're like, "Oh, okay, we're going to change how we think." Like that's how weird this entire process is, because we're literally going off of what the experts say, but the experts aren't the teams. The experts are these just knowledgeable people that try to talk to the experts.
Yeah, we're not getting, obviously, like the general managers and the scouting direct, the personnel people. They have to play everything very close to the vest. It's very likely the Vikings have based on now all the work they've done, and they still have more work to do, but they have a very strong opinion on who they have ranked over somebody else. But it would not be to their advantage to let that information leak out credibly, which is why almost everything that's out there right now, you have to take with a grain of salt. Here's one more thing to throw into the discussion about Michael Penix. So I know people are really polarized with what they think about Chris Sims, former NFL quarterback, son of Phil Sims. He's the co-host of Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk Live. He puts out his quarterback rankings every year. He's willing to go out on a limb and be wrong, but he's also had some like off-the-wall opinions that have been right over the years too.
But he loved Kellen Mond, so
he loved Kellen Mond. But hell, I mean, teams are wrong on quarterbacks. Idiots like us are wrong all the time. So,
right.
So whatever you think of Chris Sims, you can mix that in with your opinion on what he says here. Mm-hmm. Thought that the Michael Penix and Drake May pro days really showed the contrast in the quarterbacks. Penix is a machine throwing it over and over. May loses control of his throws more than any of the top quarterbacks in consideration. Penix is being underrated. He should be a top 20 pick, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So the thing with Penix, here's my question, and this could be a question across the board, but for Penix, it especially applies because his stock has been so volatile in the past 2 months. But is Michael Penix, like when we hear he can manipulate the line of scrimmage, is that being thrown out there because it's the God's truth, or is it being thrown out there by like a savvy guy like O'Connell who wants Penix's stock to rise, might knock other guys, So like that's where, to your point, Phil, everything has to be taken with a grain of salt, and some of it that can sound real can be an absolute lie. And then on this one, I heard someone else say this. May does dirt some balls, but I think the question with May is,
hold on, say that again.
He dirts some balls.
Football.
There you go.
He has a tendency. He can make some really, really bad throws. He's got a great arm, but he can make some really bad throws. But the question with May, I think, is like, let's say Penix is a machine right now, but the machine is near its zenith, right? So like this is him, and he's good. He's going to be productive, but there's not the upside. May, let's say, has things to work on, but a guy like O'Connell's like, well, heck, I can fix that. Like this is where
or the
very
opposite.
Interesting dance. Yeah.
So actually,
100%.
let's get into this. So let's do a little side street that kind of involves Michael Penix and really any of these quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. I got a JJ McCarthy nugget for you guys here too, as part of Quarterback Watch 2024. But because the Vikings infrastructure is so well positioned for a quarterback. You've got, look at the weapons. If assuming Justin Jefferson signs an extension and Addison and, Hawkinson might miss but long term, like 3-year window, the Vikings have 3 really good weapons to throw to. They've got a nice set of running backs in Ty Chandler. Aaron Jones looks like he's under contract for a year, but looks like he could be here for a couple years. Left tackle, right tackle. You got a former quarterback head coach that's done great work with Kirk Cousins and Matthew Stafford. Like it's, as people are saying, it is the car that you want to be in if you're a quarterback here. So on one hand, I feel like if you're a Vikings fan looking at this draft and maybe you're just nervously anticipating, oh my God, are they going to pick the right quarterback? Is it going to be another Ponder? Is it going to be another T-Jack? I mean, the good news from my perspective is the Vikings' excellent infrastructure might just mean that there are multiple correct choices, that there really might not be a wrong choice. That any of these top 5 or 6 guys, you can plug them into this infrastructure, this car, and they're going to be just fine, right? But does that make them less likely to take a risk on a guy whose ceiling might be higher? Like, here's my point. Is Michael Penix, because of the way that he throws, because of how much experience he has in college, right? He might have one of the highest floors that you could plug him in. He's going to find his targets. He's going to hit those, right? But to Judd's point, maybe we've already seen something close to his peak capabilities. Whereas like a Drake May, for instance, or maybe a JJ McCarthy, maybe those guys have higher ceilings where if you were to coach them and wring the washcloth for a couple years, it might start a little clunky like a Josh Allen, for instance, but if you give it like 2 or 3 years, oh my God, you're going to have this crazy 6'4" athlete who's big and makes ridiculous throws all over the place. Are the Vikings going to be risk averse? Because you know what? Why don't we just take the guy with the high floor, plug him in like Kirk Cousins, really high floor veteran quarterback, right? But he doesn't have the ceiling of a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson. How do they view those two types of options? Well, we could just plug a safe dude in here and he's going to operate, he's going to hit his targets versus, man, we got to work on this dude's footwork for 2 years before we maybe get to his peak upside. Does that conundrum kind of make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. But I think that's where, and this is going to sound crazy on its face, I think this is where Sam Darnold becomes important. Because I think if you get that player, there's a very good chance. And by the way, I think O'Connell would do that. Right or wrong, he's going to have confidence in himself to identify the faults and know if he can fix them. Now, that's the most important thing. Where do you draw the line? Where do you say, this guy's got some faults and we can't fix them all? Or this guy's got some faults, but he's coming out of college and I can fix those. So I think this is where you have to be prepared for Darnold to play an entire season. Because if behind the scenes, now it does waste a year of the contract, I get that. But if you can get 4 years of essentially salary team control that are going to be far superior than throwing the guy into the fire in week 4, 2024, and if not ruining him, stunting his growth, I think that's where we all are going to have to be patient. Mm-hmm. But the trade-off is worth it. The potential risk is worth it. Like if Drake May, because he's got the physical attributes, he clearly has the arm. If Kevin O'Connell says, he's not prepared to play yet, but once we get done with him, he will be. But it's going to take a year.
Yeah.
Then I think you definitely say, as opposed to this quarterback can start tomorrow, but we're seeing who he is. We're seeing what this guy can do. So yes, the scenario makes perfect sense, and I would argue that is exactly what this team should do. Now, this does involve a little bit about trading your 2025 first, because if you're going to spend a year with Darnold and win 7 games, you sure would like to have that pick. But I got to believe at the end of the day, if you land on the right quarterback for the next 10 years, you are even going to risk trading that pick to have the guy. And again, this is where O'Connell becomes huge, because this to me is an O'Connell decision that's not based on being boastful or being selfish or thinking that you're the greatest mind in the room, but realistically saying, I myself was a struggling QB, sort of know
Yeah.
what it looks like, so I can take Drake May and I can make him a Pro Bowl quarterback, even if it takes a year of him not playing.
Yeah, and I'd love before this episode's over too, we should go down that path of like just sort of Kevin O'Connell's history working with different quarterbacks. But just back to this current topic for a second here. Is it possible that the Vikings are set up so well here? It's hard to think of teams that are drafting in the top 10 or 12 the last like 10 to 15 years that need quarterbacks pretty desperately. How many of them have had better situations than the Vikings? Are they, and I want to knock on wood here, I know this is potentially going to jinx it or be triggering, but is there really no wrong answer for the Vikings on this test? Like, just like, I feel like almost any quarterback would step into this situation and be really, really good. Now, there's some guys that might be Hall of Fame good in 10 years and others that might just be like Alex Smith good.
Right.
But does their infrastructure make it so that there are several correct choices on April 25th?
I think there's several correct choices, yeah. I mean, and also, like, look at past precedent, which I know fans don't always love because it doesn't always align apples to apples to a degree. But, like, in 2014, the Vikings had Matt Castle, right? And then they draft Teddy Bridgewater. They also still took, was it Anthony Barr, I believe, in 24
Barr was the 9th overall pick, and then Bridgewater was it the same draft, right? Later in the first round.
That or it was
32nd.
Yeah, Trey Wayne. They took a cornerback and then they sneaked back in to get Teddy Bridgewater. The Chargers, and they drafted Justin Herbert, right? It was Tyrod Taylor, but then the damn doctor shot a needle into the lung, and that kind of accelerated things. There's always been like succession plans that are kind of in soft term, in-term succession plans that have always been in place. And I think with the Vikings, with their offense, even without TJ Hawkinson for the first month and Justin Jefferson's long-term status still a little unclear at the moment, yeah, this is very ideal. And that's where, and I know Phil's gotten clowned on this of you're scared to trade up. And Forno had this awesome, passionate rant yesterday, by the way, on Purple Daily on Draft of if you love it, go get it and don't settle. Don't settle just because there are plenty of options at the table for 11 and 23. But at the same time, I do believe Kevin O'Connell is set up here to make things very easy for a quarterback where they can ride Sam Darnold if it's the full season. Great, because maybe you unlock something with Sam Darnold, or if it's just a clipboard holder for the first few weeks as the rookie quarterback gets settled, or maybe the starter and Sam Darnold gets injured, which obviously happens all the time in the NFL.
Well, okay, on the just one last thing on the because I heard Forno's rant and it was awesome. I've seen a lot of the comments the last few weeks that Mackey is scared. We're just exploring all options here, by the way. Like if they identify someone as a level above the other ones, they should go get that quarterback. But one common theme that I've heard is, wait a second, for the people that wanted Kirk Cousins gone, why are you now balking at trading a bunch of picks and going up? Isn't this what you wanted? Well, I'll just speak for myself. I wanted to stop paying a non-elite quarterback elite quarterback money, which they've done for the better part of 6 years, and get into the rookie scale contract. I want a good rookie scale contract quarterback. I don't think it's a prerequisite that you have to draft that rookie scale contract quarterback third overall. Because there's a lot of examples of that guy being drafted 9th overall or 10th or 11th or 32nd or early second round. So I got what I wanted, which is stop paying the 12th best quarterback in the league $45 million, 15 to 20% of your salary cap when he can't overcome roster deficiencies. How they go about getting a rookie scale contract quarterback, there's a bunch of different ways here. And that's just part of the magic behind the scenes is we don't know. Again, if they have a very clear line and a gap between what they think of these three quarterbacks versus the drop off to 4, then hell yeah, haul your ass on up that draft board and get a guy that you feel comfortable about. If they feel like there's 5 correct answers on this test, it would be stupid to trade a bunch of picks and go up to number 3. You might as well save your draft capital and keep building your team. So I still loved Tyler Fornes' rant, though. You should go check it out on Purple Daily on Draft yesterday.
I think they probably have, like, let's say those 4. If McCarthy indeed is 4th, I think those 4 are probably atop the board and we don't know how. Like, that's the thing is Drake May might fit the bill perfectly because of the size and talent. The Penix question is, where does he fall? So I think if Kevin O'Connell says, hey, we got to get one of these four, and Caleb's going one to Chicago, let's just say for now, Jaden's going two to Washington, then I think you do have to do what's necessary to get one of the next two. Because like if Michael Penix is a nice player, but Drake May becomes a Pro Bowl player or a great quarterback, you don't want to regret that. Like you are in the perfect position to not regret that. Like there are ways to go up and get that pick. It's going to hurt a little bit, but that's the difference. So there might be no real wrong answer to those top five, but my guess is that there's probably a few that are in the really right, the A plus, and the Vikings are in a position for the first time in forever to actually go and do that and be confident. Because that was the thing, going back to Ponder. There wasn't a lot of confidence there. And you waited for that QB board to slide down too. That's my thing. If you're going to wait for it to slide down, you're taking your chances. So I think that you could very well make a case that there's four guys that they think are really, really good. And the question is, two of them are probably gone. So can you get one of the next two, and what's it going to cost? And you're going to have competition.
Yeah. Here's another question off this too. So you talk about like there's the Ponder types, which KOC was never around Ponder, but he was around a couple epic busts. Johnny Manziel as a coach. He coached Johnny Manziel. He coached Dwayne Haskins. I think he was the coordinator. Was he the offensive coordinator in Washington for Dwayne Haskins? So he had been around two of the epic all-time first-round quarterback busts of the last 10 years or so. He's also been around the greatest quarterback of all time in New England, Tom Brady. He was in meeting rooms as a player with Tom Brady. Now, Brady tore his ACL, but he was all throughout the offseason, training camp, leading in. He knows how Tom Brady operates a quarterback room and a huddle and a practice and all those things. Mm-hmm. And then in between, throughout his coordinating and head coaching career, he has worked very closely with Matthew Stafford and Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff with the Rams as well. Do you think KOC has learned more from watching the peak level, like Matthew Stafford winning a Super Bowl and Tom Brady in New England? Or do you think he learned more from watching Johnny Manziel and Dwayne Haskins be completely unable to figure it out as it pertains to his process of making the right choice here?
Oh, I think far more importantly, Cleveland and Washington helped a ton. Because you can see exactly what you don't want. And you can see physical talent that doesn't necessarily have the mental makeup to do it. And that's why I like what they're doing. Not they're sending guys to pro days, but Kwesi and more importantly KOC. The private workouts to me are the most important thing because that allows you to get the playbook in the guy's hand. It allows you to actually get one-on-one time.
Yeah.
And I think Manziel and Haskins probably incredibly instructive. Furthermore, I actually think the experience in Washington probably helped him a ton because if you recall, Dwayne Haskins was a Daniel Snyder mandated pick. So I think it was 17 in that draft. And Snyder's the one that said, we got to take the QB. And I think there was pushback there. But he was a putz and owned the team and took him. So I
putz is a great word. It's a highly underutilized
Daniel
insult.
Daniel Snyder, complete putz. But the fact is, I think that probably was incredibly instructive too, organizationally, because Manziel was an ultimate train wreck of a player and a quarterback. It wasn't necessarily Haskins' fault, but that pick and how it was done was a complete train wreck with an organization that was awful. So I think the bad probably Brady, watching Brady operate would be absolutely awesome. But watching how you get it this wrong, I think is incredibly valuable now to know exactly what not to do. And with Manziel, what to look for. Because a quarterback, you're not taking a receiver. You're taking a guy who, as we've discussed 1,000 times before, is going to be essentially the CEO of your franchise, and you know exactly what that looks like. I think that is a huge, huge plus if you're Kevin O'Connell.
And in that 2019 season with Dwayne Haskins, it was actually Case Keenum that ended up starting a lot of those games for Washington. And that's when Kevin O'Connell was still the OC, and he still was able to have, it was Case Keenum. He won 1 game in 8 starts, but he threw for 11 touchdowns. He had 5 picks. Case was a capable backup, as we saw here in Minnesota and other spots. So failure is definitely the best teacher, right? I mean, that goes well beyond football quarterback whispering. That's a life lesson thing of, failure is always going to be a better teacher than what you're successful at. So yeah, I think him being kind of around everything, even getting the most out of Kirk, and obviously I know Matthew Stafford's on a probably different level than Kirk, but taking Matthew Stafford, is he just a guy who's stuck in Detroit, or is there more raw talent that can be unlocked here and we can get a Super Bowl with this guy? He was a big part of that too.
Yeah, the failure thing is so interesting because if you haven't seen it up close in person, Manziel and Dwayne Haskins, and actually this guy wasn't nearly the level of bust because his teams did perform well. It was mostly because of defense, but like Mark Sanchez and Kevin O'Connell shared a quarterback room with the Jets in like 2009, 2010. And that's another pretty high first-round pick that never quite figured it out at the top level. Again, I don't want to insult. Mark Sanchez had a career in the NFL.
Yeah.
Johnny Manziel and Dwayne Haskins did not. So I don't want to put those guys in the same bin.
Yep.
But to get a feel for the personality traits, the physical traits, just like the study and all these different things, the ability or not to decipher what you're seeing on film. If you've seen a bunch of failed examples, I would think that's really helpful as opposed to someone who's only been around Tom Brady or, Matthew Stafford was the number 1 overall pick, kind of stuck in a bad organization. You can learn from that too. But yeah, that's why, I don't know, the more we go through this process, the more I feel like sort of at peace with it, that, yeah, we can have opinions on a Drake May versus a Jaden Daniels, or, if there's some people that still stand for a Bo Nix, but at the end of the day, I know Judd has drawn a line saying that Bo Nix is Judd's line.
I'm done. Yeah. Penix is not.
If they draft Bo Nix, then Judd doesn't trust
Then I've
anyone.
lost
But
all
I say,
faith.
I mean, hell, they could. I don't want to say this, but I'm going to. They could do something crazy and wind up with Spencer Rattler, and I would still be like, you know what? I trust Kevin O'Connell's background on this. I'm just gonna put trust in Kevin O'Connell's 15 years as a quarterback guru in the NFL.
Kevin O'Connell, I have no idea which of the top QBs he really, really wants, but I can tell you this. I haven't been this confident since the Percy Harvin pick in 2009 about something the Vikings will do. And the Vikings, I think, everything says they are going to find a way to trade up.
What was your take in 2009 that they were going to draft a receiver or Percy Harvin specifically?
If Harvin fell, they were going to take him, and a lot had come out. Not that it's a big deal now, but at that time he had failed a drug test. I think for pot at the combine, which the reason why that was a big deal was you're tested and you're going to be tested, and he just didn't give a damn. But I remember coming out of the press conference for that draft at Winter Park at the time, completely sold on if Percy falls, which he obviously did, they're going to stop his fall. Yeah. And they did. I don't think I've ever been as confident since then about a move that the Vikings were going to make until now, which is, I don't know which QB, but there is nothing. I don't think they're blowing smoke at all. They've had enough people reference trading up. And the reason why I think it's going to happen is there are enough teams that will do it if they don't. And that's where I don't think O'Connell's going to settle here. Like if it's McCarthy or Drake May, okay, he might have preferred Drake May. They get McCarthy, but I think when we go down the Bo Nix Rattler thing, the only quarterback that I don't know, that I can't tell, is, to me, where that line ends, is Penix.
Penix is so interesting. I mean, and again, keep in mind, the Vikings just went to Seattle and they're doing their due diligence, and they held a private workout with him. And by a lot of different accounts of people that have covered him, even just sort of watching games of Washington this year, there is a leadership quality about that guy. There is something mesmerizing about his arm. He just ran like a 4.45 40-yard dash. He doesn't use his legs to run for 1,000 yards like Jaden Daniels does, but he can scoot. He can move even after knee surgeries. Yep. What happens when you get in that room with him for several hours in Seattle? Do you become tantalized? Do the discussions out of that meeting say, okay, if we have a shot to go up to 5 and Drake May is there, let's do it. But man, we like Michael Penix, so there's no way let's not go up to 3. We like Michael Penix. He might be there at 11. I just wonder how a meeting like that changes their discussions.
I think the only thing that factors in here, and I think the thing that probably clearly drops him from those top 4 to he's almost, I think, on an island by himself at this point, are the knees. I think that's probably what scares teams because you don't know.
I do wonder with the Cowboys maybe entering a breakup with Dak because they're on the clock at 24. I think Penix, Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones, who almost drafted Johnny Manziel when Tony Romo was still just fine. I know he eventually the back injuries forced him into retirement. Cowboys, I could see them being big time players. In TCU,
that's a fun sleeper.
Or Washington, I should say, not TCU, but I can see 100% the Cowboys being a team that'd be really interested in Michael Penix too.
Do the Cowboys think they can get something from Tre Lance or not is my question. Like he's just very quietly on the shelf there.
Boy.
They traded for him. And the Cowboys are a weird team because it makes sense what you're saying. But like Tre Lance is sort of the day old bread unknown, but the bread might not be that bad. You don't know.
It's so weird. Yeah, he hasn't played. Like I know. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, without as much fanfare, because the guy I'm about to say did not get drafted as high as Tre Lance. But remember Matt Castle? He already brought him up earlier in the show here, but Matt Castle did not start a game for USC in college. Yeah, and then he sat behind Tom Brady for like 3 years or 4 years?
Something like that.
So his first game as a starter since high school was like with the Kansas City Chiefs. That's kind of what we're dealing with Tre Lance, and that he started 12 games or whatever it was. Was it 12 or 13 games in college? And he started a handful of games in the NFL. He's basically barely played in 6 years.
Right.
Or 7 years. 7 years, I want to say. Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah, famous last words for me, it could be, but I'm completely done with the entire idea of Tre Lance. Like if Kyle Shanahan's passing on him and he's a backup somewhere else and he hasn't played in 4 or 5 years, and this is maybe my classic impatient self also looking at prospects, but like what are we doing? Like what are we looking at here? What are you wasting your time with when you can just go draft another quarterback or find someone else that is more capable of playing NFL games?
The McCarthy conundrum is this. I don't know if he has a say, and who knows, it's Jerry Jones's team and his kid runs the team, but if you're McCarthy, I believe he's going into the last year of his contract. So you don't want your first round pick to be a quarterback who's not going to play.
Yeah, you'd be getting in front of it. Yeah.
He needs to win arguably right this second. It's interesting, but yeah, Penix to me is the guy that might go 7th and he might go second round.
Mm-hmm.
Like if McCarthy really slides now, I would be really surprised. It could happen, and we've been wrong before. Penix is the one I can't tell if it's more smokescreen or we just missed.
I have something on McCarthy here as part of Quarterback Watch 2024. After we shout out our friends at Fletcher Lake Lodge, Judd, a great little getaway spot for the audience here in the coming months.
Exactly right. So the draft comes and goes, and you are saying, you know what I need? I need a vacation. I need to get away. We're talking about Fletcher Lake Lodge, a full-service fishing lodge located in beautiful Ontario, Canada. Looking at it right there. Only accessible by flying in on a traditional Canadian bush plane. The remote setting ensures exceptional trophy fishing for the guests. We're talking about trophy walleye. We're talking about northern muskies, smallmouth bass. Cabins accommodate groups from 2 to 12. Dock staff prepares your fully outfitted boat each morning. Jeannie and her staff there, they treat the guests like family. That's why they have so many repeat customers at Fletcher Lake Lodge. Visit FletcherLake.com. That's FletcherLake.com to learn more or book your reservation today. Get away, enjoy Fletcher Lake Lodge, located Ontario, Canada.
So if you want to maybe get away to a golf course near the Twin Cities here, the Meadows at Mystic is back for golf season here on Purple Daily, Dex.
That's right. Our friends, the Meadows at Mystic, are back. You can escape to the Meadows at Mystic Lake for a premier golf experience like none other in the greater Twin Cities. We're getting closer. Here's me, just hacking it up, shooting 100 there a few years ago. Actually, somehow you put me on camera, and I was like, oh, I can hit the ball when I'm actually on camera. I think that might be the secret here. But if you're a legitimate golfer, or maybe you're like Dex and you're, just having fun shooting 100, I 100% recommend going to the Meadows at Mystic Lake. They got the GPS-infused carts. They have award-winning, pristine, natural settings to it. Some of the best scenery you're going to find. Go check out our friends at the Meadows at Mystic Lake and go book your tee time as it opens pretty soon. I know it was snowing and rainy here in the Twin Cities on Tuesday morning, but we're getting closer and closer to golf season. Go check out the Meadows at Mystic Lake.
And a shout out to our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. If you're a business owner out there, we know there's a lot of you that consume Purple Daily. You understand the importance of protecting your reputation, the workplace, protecting your employees, financial assets. The team at Federated is ready to help your team by creating a custom lineup of industry-specific coverages and risk management services to help you stay on top of your game. Contact your local Federated rep for more information today. Federated Insurance, where it's our business to protect yours.
Can we put Declan and Larry David swing side by side? You guys look like you've got the real lanky legs.
Oh, no.
You look like Larry, like you do. It's great.
You know, I try to be Larry in more ways than I should be.
Like, look, doesn't he look like Larry?
You were never gonna hit him in a million years.
Doesn't he look like him, Phil? Like he's real lanky. What do you do?
What's it's the tug? What is it?
Vertical drop, horizontal
tug.
Are you taking a lesson?
Vertical drop, horizontal tug.
I'm sitting on the bench. I'm just sitting on the bench.
And then the bench is blocked.
All timer.
But yeah, you do. You swing. Looks like him.
It's great. Got to get a little more rotation there in Dex's follow through. But
you're so thin, and he's really thin, so that's what looks the same to me.
So here's one more. This is from the Purple Persuasion it's TTP Skol on Twitter. Pretty much aggregates anything Vikings related the last month. It's very helpful. So some love to Alec Lewis from The Athletic here. He was hosting a radio show on KFXN radio in the Twin Cities, and he recently reached out to an AFC executive regarding some of the steam about JJ McCarthy being drafted maybe second or third. Is it media creation, or is he actually going to go second or third? And the AFC executive said, quote, "I've talked to a lot of scouts, Alec, and I think a lot of that, him being picked that high, is indeed media creation." So maybe JJ McCarthy is the one, sort of the sacrificial smokescreen lamb that's being put up on the top of these mock drafts.
And by that, what the executive means is it's media creation planted by his brethren in the league to try to get people to believe this, that he would go second or third. Where do you think is the latest he might go now? Just your gut.
Latest?
Yeah, like where so like let's say he ain't going second or third, which I buy. But okay, so he falls to
11th.
Yeah.
Okay.
I top half of the draft. Like if he fell to 15 or 16, then I'm probably I'd be pretty shocked. I'd be shocked. Wouldn't be concerned.
You feel pretty dumb, wouldn't you? You feel pretty dumb.
Pretty shocked. But yeah, I would think top half of the draft. I don't believe he'll go 1, 2, or 3. Or he won't go 1. He won't go 2 or 3. No chance. I don't think he goes 2 or 3.
I don't think he goes 2 or 3 either. It does feel like we've shoved him so high up the draft boards here. Like it was kind of jarring like a month and a half ago when he was going 11th to the Vikings. Like, all of a sudden, this guy that was available later on, or a guy that you could trade down and get, is now sitting there at 11. So I think if he gets to 11, the Vikings would love to just draft him and keep their 23rd pick and keep their 2025 first round pick.
Oh, God, yeah. The question is, would you have the intelligence? Would you have gathered the intelligence if you're the Vikings to know that he could actually get to you there?
How would that even happen? I mean, you'd have to just you'd literally have to be talking trade with every team.
Yes.
You'd almost have to trade up to like 9 or 10, because at that point, wouldn't one of those teams, wouldn't the Jets or somebody say, "Hey, the Broncos are on the other line. Just give us a third, give us like the 108, a 4th round pick."
I would agree.
So if you were to wait until 11, wouldn't that show a lack of confidence in him to some extent?
Oh yeah,
because you didn't go up and you weren't totally sure enough to go up to 5 and get him.
Well, and plus it would mean that we've all been fed, color me shocked, a line of crap. But so here's what I think you have to do now. You have to work, if you're the Vikings, you have to work your sources to have a good idea. Like if you're the Vikings today, you should have a pretty damn good idea immediately right now that the Giants are either going to take a quarterback or not, right?
How would you figure that out? By talking to other teams about their trade conversations with the Giants, probably.
That
Yeah,
whole
you
thing's interesting to
exchange
me. Is it like a meeting of the 5 families in Godfather? Like it's just there's a bunch of people around a table like trying to figure out not a peace treaty, because it's like, well, we want some of this stuff too. But I'm always fascinated by that entire angle too. Like how much would Kevin O'Connell chat with Brian Daboll? Like I'm always curious on that type of stuff.
Well, I think you also though exchange information with sources if you're a team. Like one of the reasons why a guy like Schefter gets so much is because teams work him, but he does not obviously volunteer. Like he wouldn't sell the Giants out and then call the Giants and say, "I'm really, really sorry I sold you out." But like if Schefter knows privately, and there's, I mean, imagine how much stuff
He's
gets
the town gossip.
that's
right?
not and it's not reported is what,
Yeah.
But like if I can call Kwesi and in exchange for a hamburger on Tuesday, I'll tell you what the Giants are doing on Thursday. but yet Schefter's not going to break that until draft night or something. Like it's all you basically live and trade.
It's wild out there. Yeah. In fact, I'll throw one more before we wrap this episode. Some more love to Alec Lewis here because
want a mock.
he has a mock posted at The Athletic, and it's a Vikings 7-round mock. So he doesn't do the whole draft. He just does the Vikings
Just
picks.
cherry picks the
And this is great.
Okay.
So this is he starts with not the 11th pick, not the 4th pick, not the 5th pick. His first pick is the 17th overall pick, where he has the Vikings drafting Byron Murphy Jr., defensive tackle from Texas. And he writes, "You're probably wondering, wait, number 17? How the hell did that happen?" Well, here is my thought process. Which team is focused enough on the short term to move up in exchange for multiple selections? Well, the Jaguars seem like an obvious answer. They have an intriguing second-round pick. I'm trying to see like if he writes about, he kind of says this mock draft leans into what might happen if the Vikings are unable to trade up. So he's kind of, that's the prerequisite here.
Sure.
But he says the mock trade is the Vikings sending the 11 and the 108 to Jacksonville for the 17 and the 48. So they would get a second round pick bet. They'd move back 6 spots in the first round.
Yep.
But they would move from the 108 to the 48. And they would also keep a couple. Well, they have another 4th round pick too, right? So they'd have a second round pick. And I'll give you the rest of this, but you guys tell me how triggered you would be, or if you would be into this idea, what the Vikings fans' reaction would be at the Fillmore on the 25th.
It'd be terrible.
And then with their 23rd overall pick,
Yep.
the Vikings would select Michael Penix Jr., quarterback from Washington. And obviously they would have now a second round pick, and they would have their 2025 first round pick that they didn't trade to move up.
Yeah,
I am fine with this, by the way. If Kevin O'Connell loves Michael Penix, I am 100% fine with this.
Still, I think it'd be incredibly triggering. Like I feel like my comparison is this: when you're a little kid, your parents for Christmas might get you a lot of cool stuff, but you want that one thing.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
want that trade up. And then on Christmas Day, below the tree, there's all this stuff, but not what you wanted. The disappointment is great. So I feel like it'd
sometimes
be
your
triggering to
parents
fans.
don't get you what you want; they get you what you need.
I know.
And
but
that's
I'm
what this
saying-
might be.
Sure, but you're asking me what the Fillmore would be like. I'm telling you the immediate reaction. But yeah, if they like Penix and Penix gets to 23, this is where I'm so uncertain. Does Penix get to 23? Does he get to the second round? Does he go in the top 10? Like this is the one every year. There's one of these at least, right? That you don't know. Just in case this does take place, is this Byron Murphy Jr. or the second? Does Alec have that?
I'm sorry. It's he says Byron Murphy Jr. It is. I've seen Byron Murphy the second. So
Because
I don't know.
I think the Vikings nickel corner is Junior.
He
It's
is
gonna be
junior.
very
yeah.
confusing. Very confusing.
They would have all of the Byron Murphy players in the NFL.
I would not want to be the play-by-play guy for the purple with this because it'd be very confusing.
When I called St. Cloud baseball games, there was 2 Zach Hoffmans, and it was Zach Z-A-K. No, Z-A-K and Z-A-C-H, and it was a both third baseman to first baseman.
Hoffman
so
to
ground balls,
Hoffman.
Hoffman to Hoffman. And they also, by the way, usually batted right next to each other, 4th and 5th in the order. Chaos. Great guys. But
Hoffman
chaos
played?
as a play-by-play broadcaster.
Hoffman on deck.
Hoffman to
in the
Hoffman.
hole.
It There was a lot of Hoffmans going on. Yes.
So many Hoffmans. So with their second round pick, Alec Lewis has them taking Cooper Beebe, a guard from Kansas State. So they'd be maybe drafting a starting left guard.
Yeah.
A linebacker from Notre Dame in the fourth round, Marist Liafu. Jalix Hunt, an edge rusher from Houston Christian in the fifth round. Marshawn Lloyd, running back USC in the fifth round. And then you can go check out the rest of the mock over at The Athletic. But I'm just, hey, if KOC loves Penix and they can keep all those picks and beef up their team,
Yep.
Works
Guard
for me.
right now is the same conversation, although it's not as sexy, as the Twins starting pitching staff.
Yeah, you just kind of...
Like we're sort of sleeping on it. We're like, I guess Blake Brandel will start, but then he might start, and then we're like, oh, that wasn't a good idea. I feel like guard is the ignored child in the room.
As it has been for a long time,
Well,
feels
yeah,
like.
you've complained about that for 8 years, and you're not wrong.
Speaking of Twins rotation, we got to wrap this podcast so we can do our Tuesdays with Trevor Plouffe. If you're a Twins fan and you haven't already, we got Trevor Plouffe on Tuesdays, the Score North Twins Show YouTube channel we just launched 3 weeks ago, and you guys have gotten us over, I think it's like almost to 2,300 subscribers on that, so thank you guys. And same thing on the Purple Daily channel as we inch our way closer to 50,000 subs. Click that like button and the subscribe button, and we will see you guys for Write That Down Wednesday tomorrow. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.